Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Genghis Khan, Napoleon Bonaparte. The end of 4 great conquerors. Picture a man shedding tears because acquiring 2 million square miles was insufficient for his ambitions. The ambitious conqueror, Alexander the Great, was solely driven by one aspiration: to dominate the world in his quest for glory. He led his army into battle without fearing defeat, displaying a sense of invincibility as though he were immortal. Why wouldn't he believe so? After all, the men had been on a winning streak for a decade. His soldiers were fatigued and eager to journey back home, yearning to indulge in the comforts they had earned. However, their king held little regard for wealth and showed minimal interest in governance. His sole focus lay in conquest. Everything progressed smoothly until he encountered an obstacle in India. In the heat of battle against Porus, Alexander suffered significant losses among his troops, marking one of his toughest engagements. It's said that he sustained injuries during the conflict, and even his trusted horse fell in the midst of the fighting. He continued urging his soldiers onward, yet on the opposite bank of the river stood another substantial Indian army, rejuvenated and prepared, while his own troops grew fatigued and depleted. They pleaded with Alexander to bring an end to it, whether labeling it as a day's work, a campaign, or an empire, yet he defied all, refusing to heed anyone's counsel, and ultimately, he was compelled to relent and return home. This marked the onset of his downfall. Notorious for his alcohol consumption, he exceeded his limits one fateful night, resulting in severe illness. Seizing the opportunity, his ambitious generals convened to inquire about the fate of his expansive empire upon his demise. In response, Alexander declared it would belong to the strongest among them. This declaration ignited a conflict among his generals, persisting for nearly 5 decades. The Macedonian Empire crumbled before it could fully take shape, yet its essence was never truly about Macedonia. For Alexander, it was solely about his own ambitions and legacy. After being paralyzed, he was declared deceased by physicians. Greek historians recorded that Alexander's body remained free from decomposition for 6 days following his passing, suggesting the warrior king's divine nature. Nevertheless, they overlooked the fact that he wasn't deceased to start with. Contemporary scientists now speculate that Alexander suffered from a neurological disorder that induced a coma. There is a strong possibility that Alexander was cognizant of his men's scheming before being entombed alive. Following, we encounter the admirer of Alexander, Gaius Julius Caesar. As history tells us, while Alexander lamented the absence of new realms to conquer, Caesar, upon reading about Alexander's achievements, was said to have been moved to tears. He told his men that at his age, he had already conquered Darius, but so far, I haven't achieved anything. Adopting Alexander as his role model, he mirrored him, becoming self-absorbed and narcissistic. After attaining considerable power as a general and statesman, he subverted the Roman republican system and proclaimed himself dictator perpetuo, holding perpetual dictatorship. He didn't conceal his stance either, reportedly stating that if one were to defy the law, it should only be to attain power, otherwise, strict adherence to it should be maintained in all circumstances. Roman senators harbored concerns that Caesar aimed to institute a monarchy, a move that threatened to undermine their established authority. On March 15, 44 BC, a coalition of 60 senators orchestrated the assassination of Caesar during a Senate gathering. Acting collectively, they inflicted 23 stab wounds upon him as a macabre display of affection. Caesar's final gaze fell upon his trusted ally, Marcus Brutus, among the assailants, his own adopted son. This brings us into the medieval era, known primarily for the Crusades. However, the spotlight shifted with the rise of Genghis Khan, hailed as the Beast of the East. He expanded his empire to twice the size of Alexander the Great's conquests, driven by a vision to unite the world under one sword. Unlike Alexander or Caesar, he did not perceive himself as divine or a savior. He acknowledged his tyranny and proudly proclaimed it with these words: "The ultimate satisfaction lies in dispersing your adversaries, compelling them to flee, witnessing their cities turn to dust, observing their loved ones enveloped in sorrow, and embracing their wives and daughters." Numerous narratives surround his demise. Rashid-ud-Din recounts his death as a result of the bubonic plague, while Marco Polo, the renowned Italian traveler, suggests he was shot while on horseback and succumbed to his wounds days later. Another account claims he was fatally castrated by a princess of the Western Shia Empire, whom he had forcibly kept as a mistress. The obscurity surrounding his death stems from deliberate secrecy. Khan, in his final moments, instructed his family and followers to conceal his passing. His demise came at a critical juncture, as the Mongols were in the midst of their long-awaited conquest of the Western Shia Empire, a conquest that weighed heavier on Khan's mind than his own grand funeral. Even in death, His presence spelled doom as Khan's adherents mercilessly eliminated all individuals along the path of his funeral procession to maintain secrecy. 5 centuries later, Napoleon Bonaparte emerged as arguably the most formidable conqueror of his time. With the shift from traditional weaponry to advanced artillery, Napoleon showcased unparalleled strategic brilliance in the art of warfare. While initially ascending to power in defense of revolutionary France, his ambitions extended far beyond, leading to his eventual reign as emperor. His personality, marked by eccentricity, stood out even among the ranks of other renowned conquerors. Caesar saw himself as the sole savior of his people, Alexander envisioned himself as divine, Genghis ruled as a ruthless conqueror, and Napoleon viewed himself as a master of warfare. Napoleon famously remarked, "I adore power, but it is as an artist that I cherish it." To him, the battlefield was his canvas, and he wielded his skills as an artist to shape its destiny. His ability to concentrate was immense, matched only by his exceptional memory for details and facts. During a campaign in 1805, one of his subordinates struggled to find his division despite aides searching through maps and papers. The emperor promptly informed the officer of his unit's current location for the next 3 nights, along with detailed information about the unit's status, strength, and the subordinate's military record. This remarkable feat occurred within an army consisting of 7 corps and a total of 200,000 men, all vividly envisioned in his mind. He achieved sweeping victories across parts of Europe and the Mediterranean region, his forces moving with astonishing speed, akin to the wind, albeit with a resounding impact. However, as the conflicts escalated, so did the stakes, resulting in a mounting death toll and increasingly blood-soaked battles. Eventually, his fortunes turned, and he suffered defeat at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, subsequently being captured by British forces. Despite the gravity of his actions, the British refrained from sentencing him to death, wary of turning him into a martyr. Instead, he was placed under house arrest along with a handful of his followers in a dilapidated bungalow. Living in denial of his circumstances, he sought to maintain an illusion of power and grandeur. Even during his secluded existence, he insisted on hosting dinner parties where men were required to wear military attire and women adorned themselves in elegant evening gowns and jewels, evoking a semblance of his former rule. Years of isolation and loneliness took a heavy toll on him, and he eventually passed away on the 5th of May 1821. In his final confession, he uttered the poignant words, "France, the army, head of the army, Josephine," encapsulating the essence of what held dear to him, his country, his military career, and his beloved wife Josephine. The era of the great 4 conquerors came to a close. One succumbed to a sudden illness, another fell victim to betrayal by his own men in a trade gone awry, an arrow claimed the life of Genghis Khan, and the 4th, an artist, met his end in captivity. Despite the diverse circumstances of their passing, these legendary conquerors shared a common trait, an insatiable thirst for more even in death.